right, we are in, everybody. Kevin, welcome to the show. Thanks for doing this with us.
Tom, John, thank you for having me. Happy to be here.
Yeah, it's a pleasure. I maybe you two can get into this a little bit, but I don't believe you two have spent all that much time together, which is a bit unique for us on this because usually it's John's homies we're tapping in here. Have you guys crossed paths before?
I don't think so, like, really. No, I mean, I've known who John is, but I think the nature of the geography and him being kind of Texas based and me being in Massachusetts has probably kept us from being in the same room, man.
Yeah, man, I've been really a fan of everything you guys do out there, but we haven't crossed paths, and it's pretty cool to have Dom facilitating for me there now. I'm like, okay,
It's a
building
little role
bridges over
reversal.
here, you know?
I've been around. I met some people. Yeah, I mean, it's like that's what this is all about, right? I mean, I can't say I expected to meet Kevin with the thing that I went to. Well, I mean, he was literally on the list, but I didn't know that I'd get to know him. But I think we were at what was that? That was Body Space, right?
Yeah, body space.
Yeah. That was a cool event where one of the coaches put on like a sort of by coaches for coaches educator series, and I was, as I told you, Kevin, like blown away by your presentation, the level of depth that you went into with how your gym, Mike Boyle Strength Conditioning, addresses clients from like, day zero in order to create that sort of like lifelong relationship.
Hmm.
It's the detail and the thoughtfulness and the sort of like no stone unturned aspect to it was just super, super impressive. So, anyways, when we started to put this thing together, I was like, all right, no brainer person to invite and to ask. And I think with this conversation, like, I would love, maybe even as a starting point here, if you wanted to get into a little bit of the framework that you all use at MBSC to create like really lifelong clients, like those relationships that are super, super deep and the type of people that never leave.
Yeah. And so that whole presentation that I gave was really based around that idea of, never lose a customer again, that Joey Coleman book. And that's like, we always do book club at MBSC, and that was one that we've done as a staff. And I try to really intentionally look at what we were already doing that was working well, because we had a lot of long-term clients. And then what are things that we were kind of missing the boat on? What were things, why were people falling through the cracks, either in the early lead stage from getting initial people in the door, or from kind of that real fragile stage, that first 90 days, or maybe when people had been there for a little while, why did maybe the relationship get stale? And so for us as a staff, really kind of introspectively looking at our process and thinking about, hey, where are the things that we're doing well that we can continue to double down on? And then what are the things where we need to be a little bit better? And really going through that whole process intentionally, it has really made a difference in our business as far as both our marketing and our retention goes.
Yeah, you guys seem to do. You seem to be rather self-aware, and just as a business, and you do a lot of work. It looks like to kind of look back at the process you have in place and to kind of constantly edit those. Can I ask where that comes from?
It's definitely Mike. Like I know John was saying even before the interview, Mike always says the things like, I reserve the right to change my mind, right? And so we tend to, that goes beyond technical application into like, what do we believe in our business? And so being introspective, we do, the most valuable part of our meeting is our all hands on staff meeting every single week, where it's like usually starts with, hey, these are the things that we're doing well, but here are all the things we need to do better. And let's all sound off on how we think we can do that. And so continually creating an environment where we can kind of improve the standard of our business, whether it's coaching or whether it's customer service or management of each other, whatever it might be. Having that be the norm in our culture, I think, is really important.
Yeah, John, you spent 10 years working in a gym? Like, what was Onnit's approach there? And do you think this is like to some degree the norm amongst the top gyms? That sort of approach?
I think it's the norm among any organization where you have, we're talking about client stickiness, but you're talking about development of your own staff as well to facilitate that. And anywhere that is really continuing to evolve, you have to have, we were talking to Kenny Santucci about people are the source of creativity, and it's a creative process to iterate and improve upon your business model. Even if there are best practices, you got to have people that are on the front lines observing and investing that energy of being observant and wanting to contribute back at these type of meetings. And because there's a difference between participation and contribution. And I think the best organizations always facilitate an opportunity for everybody to contribute. Now, that's exactly what I hear Kevin saying.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's spot on. And that what we always tell our staff is like, this is your opportunity to steer our business in one way or the other. That's why we're not having these meetings. They cost money. They for no reason. Like they cost money. We have payroll, like all these things. We're doing it because we think it's a worthy investment for 40 of our staff members to sit there for an hour or 90 minutes and weigh in on all the things we need to do. And so we've tried to make a conscious approach where it's not just myself or Mike or Steve or Dan, whoever speaking to the staff, but then planning ahead, asking our staff for what they want to contribute beforehand. So it's an environment where they're actually making a difference in what we do. And that's something we've worked on. Like we had to get better at having meetings and having development conversations, because it's very easy to just kind of tell the staff what to do and then expect them to go do it rather than create an environment where they steer it.
Well, how many people have you seen like transcend, limiting beliefs about their ability to present or
yeah.
like have the confidence or competence to speak to not only their peers but the people they look up to within your organization? And how rewarding has it been to see those people step up and be able to do that?
Yeah, I mean, that's one thing. We've been sending people intentionally to go to things like public speaking courses. That's one of the investments we make for our staff. And then saying, hey, you're going to start by speaking to the interns every week. That's a less threatening environment. Okay. Then you're going to start to do interstaff presentations. And then you're going to go and we put you in opportunities to go and do wider education outside of the gym. And so developing their skills as, a leader and a teacher and like an orator, I think is important, because the ability to speak or the ability to write kind of 10x's your impact. And I think there's a lot of young people who might be afraid to start that, but putting them in an environment where it's safe, I think is really important.
Yeah, you don't really spend much time thinking about how vital public speaking is as a coach, but it's also a learned skill, and I think people assume it's a skill you're born. You can be born with it. Like I've never had like stage fright up on a stage. I can't relate to that, but I've seen people grow. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
my co-founder and best friend Ian is like famously a terrible public speaker. He gave an unbelievable speech at my wedding like 2 months ago, and I was like, you need to reconcile your self belief as a bad public speaker with the speech that you gave, because it was actually fantastic, and he worked on it. Like he got better at it through pitching constantly, our
Yep.
company, and through speaking in larger and larger groups as a company, and it's definitely learned. And I noticed at the spring seminar that I was at a couple months ago, I guess probably 6 months ago now, there is you see a spectrum of people, in that room. You guys put on this great event. There's over 200 people tuning in to what somebody has to say up on this stage, and you see a whole spectrum of quality in people's ability to speak. But every person who came out of MBSC who had to present just did a fantastic job. And I think I even said something to you, Adam. I was like, how the hell are these people all so good? Like 200 people is not a small amount of people. Like
No.
it's one thing to lead a class of 20 to 30, but to get up in front of 200 and present information, like recall and deliver it, like that's incredible. And I think it's one of the things that you all do that interests me the most is it's like a factory for creating coaches who have that well above average ability. And I think that's really impressive.
Yeah, and I'd say like a lot of it goes back to kind of our internship experience. Like I can think back to when I was an intern. And I really struggled to vocalize or project my voice. And Nicole Rodriguez was my internship director, and I remember her like really trying to push me to get hired there, and Mike being like, "I have no idea who that is." Because like I wasn't loud, I didn't stick out. And she said to me, she said, I need you for the next like month and a half, the rest of this internship, to make sure that everybody hears your voice on the floor and that you're a presence, right? So like you said, it's a learned skill. And I learned how to be an introvert that when I was coaching was more of an extrovert or a social extrovert. And the same thing goes to public speaking, in that like when I first started, I was so scared and uncomfortable. And I just took every opportunity to do public speaking as a skill. And that's what I tell everyone. They say, hey, how do I get an opportunity to do what you do? You have to just start
Yeah.
and fine tune that skill like your business partner did. to be able to become and take yourself to the next level.
Kevin, I'm
Yeah.
I'm curious. At the facilities that I've played a leadership role in, something that I'd always encouraged is this kind of process. It's a lot like what you're talking about. We didn't have necessarily a formal internship like you guys do, but even as people naturally evolved as coaches, I've always said, as you evolve as a coach, the ratio of the type of coaching you do, you're going to find opportunities to coach in different formats. Whether it's one-on-one, which is really about fostering an intimate connection, having a lot of awareness, being able to make fine-tuning little adjustments with language and cues. Cues, whether they're verbal or even like regressive skills, or using constraint based coaching, and you get to be able to do that really at a really granular level, and then being able to go from one-on-one to a small group where you have to do much more of what you're saying. You have to have that command presence, but also we had classes which were a little less structured in terms of progressive, in terms of progressions, but they might have, progressions, regressions for each skill within a class, but it was highly dynamic. It was loud. So it was almost like edutainment. You're facilitating experience, but you're also delivering a lot of value and technical support. Right. And then where a lot of people got hung up is kind of the same spot that you're talking about, is like once they started having to present to their peers, and or I would always encourage, when somebody really found their passion, because we had a multimodal education system, I would have them participate in long format deliverables an assistant, and then start asking them to provide their input because they were on the floor using that material daily, and just
Mhm.
kind of start to pull the little threads to say, like, come on, you have let's unlock what it is that you have to offer, and you build a lot of value for all the people that are here. um you know what are the different formats that you guys coach in at MBSE? Because I know I've had Olympic level athletes that went and trained at your facility. I guess they're probably not your forever clients, but I'm guessing you have a general population offering, and how does that all look?
Yeah, so it's interesting. MBSC has really changed. Like when I started in 2008, we were mainly almost fully in a sports performance facility, of groups of both high school, college, and professional athletes. We had maybe a handful of general population clients in a group or some personal training. But since then, the whole business has grown. But if you look at the makeup of who comes and trains with us, I would say this time of the year, it's probably 60% general population. People doing personal training or group format with 8 to 10 people in a group. Um, and then when it gets to the summer, we kind of switch the other side because we have a whole bunch of college and professional athletes who come back, mostly in the off season, being June through to September. We kind of switch 60% athlete, and so for our coaches getting experience, if I take you kind of through the pathway that an intern goes through, they're going to start their first experience coaching is going to be middle school kids, uh, for two reasons. It's more forgiving, right? Professional athlete, college athlete who's been here for a while is going to see your mistakes a little easier. I can put you into a group of middle school kids and start to have you coach a warm up. I can have you start to coach a split squat and then give you feedback as a coach. Then we kind of move them up through the high school and the collegiate groups once they start to get some experience and we're feeling good about them. The adult groups are kind of the things they get to last because, like to your point, like you said, one, it's more about establishing relationships, especially with these Gen Pop clients who might have different personalities. The kids kind of generally, or athletes are with us, like you said, 3 to 6 months maybe at a time. The adults are here 12 months a year. And so then they kind of move into coaching adult groups and that. And then finally, when they get hired, then they'll start to get some personal training clients so they can really get into the one-on-one stuff. And so we're kind of developing their skills through those lenses as they go, and they need to be able to kind of shift from being the way you lead a middle school group is going to be different than the way you lead, an adult group, right? I can kind of yell at the kids and lead them and coach them like a coach, whereas the adults kind of are maybe sometimes like, hey man, tone it down a little bit. And so it's like, how do you kind of do that and trying to teach those coaches to wear a different hat? I said, you got to have a different personality every hour when you do this for a living lots of times. How are you able to kind of modulate that effectively?
Are there criteria that you're looking for within young coaches as they're kind of progressing through these steps to say, okay, you're ready for the next thing?
Yeah. So Dan McGinley and Nico Dandini, who run our internship process, do a really good job and kind of have a structured format where they're meeting with these interns weekly, both individually and as a group, and kind of giving them feedback at the end of the night every night. They kind of sit and do like a wrap up every night. Here are the things you did really well. Here are the things you need to work on. And then kind of putting them in situations to challenge them throughout the internship. So, hey, your ability to project and control, if you have 14, 13-year-old boys, how can you manage that group on the floor so they're not going absolutely crazy? I want to see your group control, your ability to project, how often you're moving up and down the floor in between, like, because you have a group of 14, but you're coaching 14 individuals. And then, hey, your mastery of progressions and regressions, because like when I'm running a group of kids, I mean, it might say on the sheet, hang clean 3 sets of 5, but one kid's hang cleaning, one kid's doing loaded jumps, one kid's doing swings, depending on, what maybe their contraindications are from injuries or sports go. And so I want to see that they're kind of managing both the leadership piece, but also the technical piece. And as we start to see that they're able to have kind of the ability to go out and start to do these things on their own. Like, hey, he went and fixed that exercise before I said anything. He managed that situation well. Then we're going to feed them more opportunities. And then those generally become candidates for us to hire them at the completion of the internship.
So what do you think are some of the things that are the most common like areas of improvement for these coaches that you all end up kind of coaching and improving upon?
Confidence in their ability to project their voice and lead a group. Like when they first start, there's a lot of like, all right, guys, like, split squat. Like, and I'm like, guys, speak to them directly. I want to see energy, right? That's just a confidence thing. That's the biggest thing. Being the understanding the amount of urgency you have to have on the floor. Like when you have 10 kids, there shouldn't be a point of time where you're just kind of standing there. Mm-hmm. And I would say like, you should constantly be going from this kid to this kid to this kid. I want to see that they kind of have that naturally, that they understand you're constantly on the move. I always still say I feel Nicole Rodriguez behind me from like when I was an intern. Like she's going to be like, hey, what are you doing? Like you should be coaching. That's what I want them to have. Some people get that, some people don't.
Yeah. Well, I was gonna ask, like in hospitality, to steal from it's behind me somewhere. Setting the table, Danny Meyer. Like, there's that concept that kind of like there's stuff that can be learned, and then there's stuff that's sort of like the innate tell as to whether or not over the long term you're going to be good at this job. And in hospitality, I think the easy one for front of house people is like, do you have a genuine desire to take care of people?
Mm-hmm.
What would you say that is, if there is something in coaching?
That is 100% it. Like I have some coaches who come to me, and I can think of someone I have right now who's like Courtney Moulton, who works for us. She's been with us for a few years. She had no background in strength conditioning before she came here, like many people, but she has that. And so the clients that she has, they love her and they make referrals. She learned the technical piece when she came here. She had no idea the coaching aspect at all, but she was a former athlete, so she could demo stuff. And we taught her the strength and conditioning piece, but she had that innate like thing for her athletes where she really cared. She went the extra mile. She always coached them hard. She would send them a text on their birthday. She would, all those little things. I can't teach you that. Right. And so that is an innate thing. And that's something when we see that in internship, I'm like, this person might be really raw from a technical standpoint, but I want to bottle up that thing that they have that is kind of natural.
Yeah.
A recurring theme that we've heard from other really game-changing operators in this series is the way Luca said it was like, have a vision that pulls you. And when you're talking about a person who has an innate desire to be of service to other humans, to contribute and be part of their journey to bettering themselves, I think that's one of those things, like you said. Courtney didn't have any technical experience. She was an athlete, so she had some personal experience with movement and was able to emulate skills. But coaching is very different, right? And understanding the whys from the perspective of a coach. But why would she not invest in that if that was the platform she was able to find her purpose? I love what you're talking about too, this projection and the technical ability and the presence. So like one of the things is once you have that command presence, and I just wanted your input on this. You know, once you have established this command presence, this front of room presence, and you're able to like own the room, and you get everybody's attention really well. One of the things I always thought was understated was your presence is a coaching cue. Like when you move through the room, if somebody wasn't doing 100% and you just walk right by them, they zip up really quickly if they have that level of respect and regard for your presence, right? And
Yeah.
so, and then I'd always say that you have to be Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. If you're in front of the room, you're crazy. You're like getting everybody in, maybe do a little storytelling, get everybody really honed in, break the monotony, and then boom, you're in. And then once you're moving around, some people need to get riled up. Some people need to be like, hey, you know what? I know this is what everybody's doing, but like you said, whether it's contraindications, injuries, or just lack of technical skill, this is what I want you to do. Don't worry. Hey, I see you over there. Don't be. I want those reps back. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
you have your head's on a swivel. You're never. You should never be less than 100% engaged, whether it's in those intimate moments or whether it's you're the crazy coach keeping everybody accountable with that high threshold of energy, right?
Yeah. And so, like, like you said, it's about when you move through the room, if they know that you're someone who holds them accountable or holds them to a standard, sometimes the coaching takes care of itself. I always say, like, the best coaches that I have by the fifth week in like our summer program, hopefully coach themselves out of a job. In that those kids, like the standard is being done, you just read off the program, tell them what they need to do, and they get to work. That's how I know. I always tell my coaches, hey, this first phase, these first like 3 to 4 weeks, if you coach your ass off this first phase, the rest of the summer is going to be real easy for you because you're going to create a standard, you're going to create expectations, you're going to create belief from the people within your group. And when they do that, all of a sudden you blink, and the rest of the summer, the next two phases seem easy because they're kind of on autopilot. They understand the routine, they understand what it is that you want. And then, like you said, from being a group leader to then being zoom in on the individual. There's a great quote from the coach, Tom Martinez, and he says, and I always say this to my staff about managing relationships with kids, is that some kids need shit and some kids need ice cream. And it's about finding the right mix between both. I'm in a really wealthy area on the North Shore where there's a lot of kids who've had ice cream their whole life, you know? And so maybe you're the person who has to give them a little bit of hardship on a daily basis and hold them accountable, and because nobody else in their life is. And then when I also get some kids that come to see us who aren't from such a great background, and maybe they need a little bit more ice cream because their whole life has had a lot of shit in it. So it's about being able to manage that balance in every single relationship inside of a group is really what makes a great leader in a coaching in a group setting.
Yeah, I don't know if I've ever heard your story as to why you care so much about this stuff. Because again, you keep it at this level of depth that's it's very useful to somebody listening in. Like I have to manage customer relationships, and I take inspiration from the sorts of things that you're saying. It's you're like you're deep in there, and you think about it rather intensely, and you present it really well, and you clearly care a lot about this kind of stuff. What drives that?
To me, I think with a lot of people, and maybe my similar story to that, like I had really good formative relationships from coaches at a young age.
Yeah,
And I think that helped me kind of steer the path that I was going to go on. And I saw value both from, my personal development from the coaches that I had. I went through an injury and had a really good, actually, rehab process with a physical therapist and a strength and conditioning coach. That was really formative for me. And then I thought, like, this is really cool. And when I walked into Mike Boyle's strength and conditioning the first time, I'd never been in a environment like this. I walked in, I was like, this is like Disneyland for me. And I was seeing the relationships that we were developing, the impact we were having on kids. And I saw the power kind of, Mike talks about the idea of the 10-year window. You don't realize the impact you might have someone 10, 20 years down the road. And we have, kids who say, hey man, thank you so much. I went into a career path because of my experience with you in high school, or, you kept me training and staying committed to my sport instead of, getting in trouble and dropping out. And you start to see the impact you can have on people. And I think that really resonated with me at an early time in my career there. And so I don't take it lightly what it is that we do, whether it's for Gen Pop or for kids and competitive athletes. I think that we have a really valuable tool here. And so I really am kind of dedicated trying to do the best job that we can.
yeah. You definitely found yourself at a place that seems to scale that idea of like, okay, there's a client and you get to know them as a coach and you really impact them both by teaching them how to do things and holding them accountable to it. And I can't think of another place that's able to do that to so many people, both just in the gym and the digital products you all have created. So it's definitely it's a really beautiful place, I guess, for somebody like yourself who cares so deeply about that. And maybe it's a little bit of a segue into something I wanted to talk about coming into this, which is the idea of mentor and menteeship, because John and I talk about this all the time on social and to coaches, and we think that it's one of the things, if you were starting off as a coach in the industry, like the absolute best thing you could do is find a mentor. Like I can't think of one thing that is more worthwhile than that. Obviously, it needs to be the right mentor, and there's a conversation about how to find those. Um, I think you found about as good of a mentor as possibly exists in the
Mhm.
industry. So if you could talk to a little bit about what that was like, and any takeaways that you have for coaches who are looking for mentors or maybe even looking for mentees.
Yeah, I mean, I was very fortunate, and I'll start it by saying I had no idea who Mike was when I first went there. I had met a guy who had done an internship or a mentorship, kind of 1 week long mentorship prior, and he said, "Hey, he's like, you should really look into this place," and I didn't even know it existed, and so I started there, and what I saw in with Mike and Bob Hansen, Mike Boyle and Bob Hansen, who own the facility, was two guys doing really, I was like, I can do that. And that's what I want to do. And I knew from an early age that like I was just going to stay in private and I wanted to own a facility and ideally own this facility as I do now. And so and Mike was very helpful in that, like, he's always been very good at providing us opportunities, saying, hey, why don't you go try this? And then also letting us be entrepreneurial as he has been. And so when you're learning, it's scary to be an entrepreneur. It's scary to start a business. But if you have someone who's almost going to help you and almost put you in a situation where you have an incubator, like CFSC was born out of Mike saying, hey, why don't we do this? Let's start this business. And then Movement is Medicine, when I started the massage business, saying, hey, you can start this here. Here's a safer place where you can start to do this. And letting me kind of try it. And then me being able to look at what him and Bob have done and ask them questions on a daily basis. Because the truth is, no one knows what they're doing when they start a business. I think there's this idea that everyone goes in with this perfect plan. But having people that you can talk to who have been successful and trying to model your behavior off theirs is absolutely priceless, because you save a ton of frustration and fast track yourself into a place where you can be successful. And so, I mean, I was fortunate to stumble upon someone who was a great mentor. And I think that you need to look at someone doing the things you want to do and take the chance to even ask them or put yourself in a situation where you can pull off them for a little bit of leadership and guidance.
You know, Dom and I, we talk about this a lot, and the challenges that coaches have in the environments that they work in a lot of places where that leadership doesn't foster this support system for entrepreneurship of the people
Yeah.
within the business, and how that's create a really big like a chasm, a gap between what one party wants and the other party wants. I love hearing how that's been your journey to be in this environment that was an incubator, because everywhere that I've ever played any leadership role, that was my number one priority. Is like I want to challenge and support everybody on the staff to figure out how they can tap into their greatness, whatever area, whatever sliver of focus that they really naturally invest time, energy, and love into. Then I want to nurture that and try to pull that out of them in a way that they can be a contributor to not only the local environment, but to the industry in some way, shape, or form. And you know, it just makes me really happy to hear that that's what your journey is like. How have you seen any improvement in terms of the wider, broader culture of the fitness industry in trying to foster that type of environment? And what would you say to gym owners that might feel threatened in supporting the entrepreneurial spirit of their coaches?
Yeah, I think that if you're a gym owner or a manager, you can't operate it from a place of scarcity, and that you feel that you're threatened by these people developing themselves within your business. And so, what I've saw from people like Mike and Bob is that they knew that if they helped myself grow, Brendan Rearick, Steve Bigelow, these people who have all grown things within MBSC, if they helped us grow, one, it was going to help keep us there. the biggest
Yeah.
issue in fitness is turnover. In
Yeah.
that, like, these people, they're trading dollars for hours, and they're working 60 hours a week, and they're like, I can't make any more money because you can only pay them so much to coach a session. Whereas if they can say, hey, we're going to build something together where you're going to have some equity and you're going to get some too, right? And you could build something great that provides some stability for all of you, then all of a sudden you're doing more than you ever imagined. Because I'll tell you, Mike, very from his own lips, said, like, I'm not going to do CFSC, like, but I'll give you an opportunity to help build this business. And so this was something that he was like, I'm not going to do this, but if you want this opportunity, you can grow it. And so if you're a gym owner thinking about how can I create these opportunities for people and put them in positions to win.
It's like the this is we're talking about the crux point of like every young coach's entrepreneurial journey. Like this is the point of friction that
Yes.
they have to figure out how to navigate. 100, like nobody doesn't have to figure this out unless they just like win the lottery ticket of Instagram, 2 years in or something like that. But like
Yes.
for most people, and that's not even like, even that's not a guarantee of success because you got to become a good coach first. And you're probably going to do that at a good gym. And then it's about, okay, I want to go run my own business, but I have to respect my boss's wish. Am I contributing to this gym?
Mhm.
Is this gym going to help set me free? And I hear it every day on demos with coaches, every day. And I hear the full spectrum of, I really would love to go forth and I have this client base that I think I could serve, but I know as soon as I launch this digital product, the guy who runs my gym is going to come to me and say, hey, why don't you just do that for us? And then I see the opposite where the gyms are going, hey, we've got free space on Saturday afternoons. They're wondering if I can host an event here, but they're going to let me keep like 80% of the revenue. They just want people in the door and they want more visibility. It's like this total spectrum. And then I think, John, you asked the question like, which direction is it headed? I think like if you look at the like the biggest chains, they have the biggest retention problems. And they're like, it's that kind of like the new coach joins and they're gone in a year and they're gone in 2 years. And that number's, I think, getting even shorter. And one of the reasons is because coaches are waking up to the value they can provide on their own. And, I won't name names, but like we've had some pretty cool conversations with people at those sorts of gyms who are trying to kind of like twofold create more client engagement. But there's an awesome article that came out yesterday from the Fit Insider crew. It's like the gyms that are winning are doing so via retention over acquisition. So they're trying to create more client engagement, to create more retention by giving their coaches opportunities to create their own products that are therefore like kind of decreasing the gap between the client and the coach at a box gym. And I'm like, that's amazing because if you do that right, which eventually probably means you have to like seed either some of the revenue to the coach or like give them a platform to continue to grow those things that they're creating for those clients, you're just going to retain way more coaches because if they can
Mhm.
do it through you and still have some of that stability, then that's a win-win for everybody involved, and that's just a better industry for all parties.
Yeah, that's spot on. I think that, like, you're looking at these health clubs, and like that's where the biggest turnover always is big health clubs. And so if they can create a little bit of something for their coaches to be able to grow and feel like they have some ownership and control over, then and like you said, you create this closeness between the client and the person. There's not this big gym in between. Then all of a sudden, I think you see that change, and I think, all the way down to smaller training facilities like that might maybe have 10 employees. Like, at some point you need to find something that these people can hang their hat on outside of just 30 personal training sessions a week or whatever it is that they're doing. And so I
Yeah,
think that's got to be the future of it.
it's funny though because it's hard because like even when people are like, oh hell yeah, I want to collaborate with my coaches. Like we've built some experimental features at Somble to make that easier, whether it's just like payment splitting on stuff that kind of celebrates both brands at the same time. And like I would say in 80% of the examples, people are more willing to say that they love the idea of supporting and collaborating with their own coaches than they are to actually follow through on the thing and actually elevate. And I mean, on it to me is like the ultimate example of the other side of that, where they were like, we're going to be a launch pad for your brand and we're going to help you blow up and we're going to follow along with it. it's not a playbook everybody can run. But John, you guys ran that to perfection, I would say, over the last decade.
Well, it was the focus, and I think that's what you hear Kevin saying is like it's
Yeah.
the gym is a place of serving your community, right? But if you have, uh, like a talent minded, like a talent development minded leader, he's always looking to be able to influence the next generation of game changing coaches, right? And that's what you have in Kevin, right? It's like I want to own a gym. Actually, I want to own this gym. And now, what do you say? Like, and now, that's the situation I'm in. And so, it take it takes some, you're always interviewing your employer, whether you know it or not. People always think like they put a lot of pressure on themselves to like satisfy some somebody's arbitrary desires in an interview. But like, I want to know if this is a place I'm going to be able to stay and grow. Like it could be a job. That's awesome. If I need a job, I can song and dance and get this job. But if I'm going to be here in 5 or 10 years, like Kevin said, the 10-year window, I want to be in a position where I know that the place I'm at and the people I'm around are fostering an environment where 10 years from now, I won't even recognize who I was when I walked in the door in terms of my skill set, my confidence, my competence, like, the opportunities. Like you talk about it all the time, Dom. The opportunity sets based on your relationships. And I want to be in an environment where those relationships are a natural part of things. People have aged out, but they never broke away with like animosity. They want to come back and contribute. And I think that's what you see in the best environments is even
You
when.
guys have both done that in your gyms. You guys have
Mhm.
both done that.
Yeah, I mean,
That's
and
very
that's
cool.
that's what you see. Kevin, he's like honoring all these people who've been part of his process because they're all been so instrumental, and they're all still people that can be celebrated in the current paradigm, right? Where a lot of times people they look back and they have a negative association to some of the people that led them. They don't feel like they opened doors for them, and that's I think that's a huge it's a huge part of our conversation. So I just love talking to Kevin and hearing how his experience has been.
You guys built a fucking factory that just creates coaches that go out and do great things afterwards. Both of you have done that, and I think in very different ways, but
Mhm.
with the outcome being super, super similar, and it's certainly commendable. All right, look, we're coming up on time here. I want to ask a final question for you here, Kevin. Like, if you have any words of wisdom for the coaches who are on the floor grinding away, maybe just starting to pick their head up and build a little bit of a vision or a dream for their own business, what would those words of wisdom be?
Like what I say to my coaches all the time is like, you don't realize the value that you have. If you're someone who's coaching every day, right, and you have a bunch of clients and you're doing well in the gym, you can 100% take the things that you're doing if you're already a successful coach in person and leverage them into an online brand, a education business, something like that. I think that very often it's these people who actually have a lot of value that tend to have a lot of doubt in themselves. And I say, like, the conversations you're having every day with your coaches, the way that you program, the way that you communicate, all of that is value that can be, impactful to people outside of your immediate building that you're working with. And what it takes is then the ability to communicate, the ability to speak, and the ability to write. And then you need to start doing those two things. Once I started writing all the time, and once I started public speaking all the time, even starting small, maybe it's your own private blog, or you're going to speak for free at your friend's business about workplace wellness, that's when you're going to start to be able to 10x your impact. But you can't do that if you don't start practicing your communication skills and trying to leverage the things that you're doing in person with your clients outward. And so you have to start, though. And so you got to take the first step to begin either writing every day or speaking every day to be able to reach more people.
Well said, brother. Well said. All right. Well, thank you so much for hopping on here with us and sharing a ton of wisdom to a community of people that I know already looks up to what you do and respects the business that you built and helped, grow to something that's really a brand name in the space. So yeah, just thank you for coming on here and doing your thing, man.
My
Appreciate it.
pleasure, guys. Thank you for having me.
Thanks, Kevin.
All righty, folks. All right. We did it.
Nice.
Technical difficulties aside,
We did.
Kevin, Thank you again. I'm sorry for the 19 minutes of bullshit hopping
It's
on
all
here,
good.
but yeah, man, appreciate the words of wisdom. And you know what I noticed about that one is, John, we successfully did a whole episode without the concept or words hard work coming up once,
Oh,
which is great because it's basically the only thing we've talked about. Unsurprisingly, when you start your first one with Luca, and then you go to
Yeah,
like, yeah, like, and then Hannah said the same shit, and Kenny said the same shit. Marcus did say the same shit, but like in a goofy way.
yeah.
It's not that you're not an incredibly hard worker, but I think people needed to hear like a
A different.
variety of,
Yeah,
yeah, exactly. I was like, I'm going to steer the conversation away from that. So,
well, I think
no,
that's the
really, really
difference of
great stuff.
mentorship that you brought up is because then you're in a system of progressive development rather than you're just jumping in the deep end and trying to figure everything out for yourself.
Mhm.
And a lot of us, we didn't necessarily have that local
No,
mentorship. You know, I had to figure everything out myself and fall on my face publicly over and over and over again. And
yeah,
that was my process too. But like, that's why I get so excited hearing Kevin's story and what he's perpetuated through his position of leadership there as well. You know, it's like, man, fuck yeah, this is what the industry needs more of.
yeah, yeah. Thank you guys. It was great. I really enjoyed the conversation. So
Yeah, absolutely. And also, I just realized that I left a recording on accident that entire time. So we maybe there's some bonus content for the folks, or maybe we'll clip it. We'll see.